Hello everyone, I'm Nick Peters, the gaming theologian, and I affirm the virgin birth. Is that media safe for your children? Okay. So first off, just to tell people where we're at, we're going through Final Fantasy Legend 2. We did some backtracking to go to the nasty dungeon, because there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. And we've got some powerful monsters on our team. So let's go and see what we can do here. Well, that was quick. So anyway, I'm online today, and I'm part of a group for Christian nerds. Big shock, huh? And anyway, in this group, someone talks about how this Christian they think is being treated harshly because of something she wrote about, Spider-Man Brand New Day. And myself and several others in the group were saying, no, this lady's being ridiculous. Because what she was talking about was that, well, Spider-Man's supposed to be family friendly, but it had so much profanity in it, including God's name in vain. Okay, now let me be as sure as I can be on this with you all. I don't use profanity at all. Try and find someone who knows me who has ever heard me use profanity. You're going to be looking for a while. They don't exist. Having said that, even though I find it distasteful, I can't always say profanity is wrong. I consider it much more of a social sin than I consider it a biblical sin. That it can be distasteful in a social sense. But there are times I can say it makes sense. I think if someone wants to use profanity, whether it be in real life or in a story, it should be not something generally used lightly, but something used to indicate strong emotion on the part of the presenter. If the villain has just killed your child and you're using profanity, that makes sense. I understand that fully. If you just use it just because, that doesn't make as much sense. Now, what about the idea of GD? Yeah, that's tasteless, I think. But I also do not think that is what Scripture has in mind when it says, do not take the Lord's name in vain. I think it refers more to treating God's name lightly. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that I think I see Christians doing this on a regular basis, and they don't even realize it, but that's what they're doing. I think when Christians come out and say, God told me X, many times without an explicit verbal, "Thus saith the Lord," they are actually taking God's name in vain. It is claiming to speak for God when God has not spoken. Anyway, what we're going to try and do here is heal every time for my monster, if that option is available. So many of us were looking at this and saying, no, this woman's being extreme because she said that she and her children walked out. She told her husband they were leaving, to which I was thinking, why isn't this husband speaking out? Isn't he supposed to leave the family? I need to put that on silent. Hold on. I try to always remember to put my phone on silent before him, but sometimes I forget. So, this raises a lot of questions overall, though, about how we are supposed to analyze media and how we're supposed to look at things. Now, first off, simple tip. If you're a parent and you're trying to protect your children, you should always, before you see any movie whatsoever, check and see what's being said about it online. Every time. That is your due diligence. It's what you are required to do as a parent. Okay? Now, also, I want to encourage you to not look at this simplistically either. Now, one interesting thing that this lady said was, well, we went to see the Jurassic Park movies, and I mean, we were fine with dinosaurs eating people, but we didn't like all the profanity in this movie. I was like, okay, this seems a bit odd. Now, it could be said that, and some people have said that, where she's not going to encounter dinosaurs eating people in the real world. And yeah, that's true. But at the same time, that doesn't mean it's not something to consider seriously. For exceptionally young children, yes, that could be something that could be considered traumatizing for them. They may not be ready to experience dinosaurs in that way. This is why you need to look beforehand and consider the age of your children. Having said that, though, I do understand the concerns about profanity. I did a research paper for a class on the claim of violent video games. And I could give a whole talk on that sometime for us. If that's something you'd like to hear, let me know. But ultimately, what I concluded, based on my research, was that the case doesn't hold up. That blaming violent video games is simplistic. But there was an interesting development that it was found in the research that some experts did, that if there was something that older siblings were trying to protect younger siblings from in their content of media, it was profanity. Because they said, hey, I'm not really that worried about my little sister going out and, attacking people on the streets. But she could very easily repeat words that she hears, and I don't want her to do that. They were also concerned about nudity in games. He said, I don't want my younger sibling to see some things. So this is an interesting development in that area. So, in looking at this, I'm not going to say it's totally fine if something uses profanity. Don't worry about that with your children. But at the same time, I'm not going to say let that be the ultimate deciding point. Because one thing is clear, eventually your kids are going to hear profanity. It's not an if, it's a when. You cannot isolate them from that forever. But there's far greater concerns, I think, than if some movie uses or media of any sort. This doesn't just apply to movies, it can apply to video games, it can apply to books, it can apply to anything else out there. And the concern I have ultimately is what is the worldview taught by whatever is under question? That's what we really need to examine, because unfortunately Christians have a habit of looking for the key terms, the key ideas, and missing everything else as a result. So, something could have profanity in it and still be something that is worth viewing for an age-appropriate child. An illustration I often give is I remember when I was in my high school English class. I think I was in 11th grade. And we spent a few days watching a movie. This movie had a lot of profanity in it, if I'm remembering correctly. A whole lot of it. Not only that, this movie was extremely violent. There was death taking place in this movie, left and right. It was everywhere. You could not escape it. Not only that, this movie also had nudity in it. Constant nudity. Full frontal nudity. You saw it all. You saw everything a woman had. Not just everything a woman had. You saw everything multiple women had. So, oh my gosh! You watched that in school? Yep. Yeah. I sure did. And I'm going to go even further than that. I am thankful we saw this movie. Not only that, I'm going to go even further still and say I think when a kid is age appropriate, such as high school, every high schooler should see this movie. This is a movie with nudity in it. Yep. It's a movie with violence in it. Yep. It's a movie with profanity in it. Yep. Why would you possibly recommend a movie like this? Because this movie is Schindler's List. Ew. Okay. Well, that makes more sense now. Because you see, Schindler's List is one of those classic movies that should be seen by everyone. Because while it does have those things in it, those things are necessary. Because this movie is meant to tell you just how awful the Holocaust was. And it doesn't sanitize it for you. Women didn't go to the gas chambers wearing nice pretty dresses. Women were stripped naked to go to the gas chambers. This movie is violent because the Holocaust was violent. And we should seek to make sure that we never repeat that again. This is a movie kids need to see. Eventually. I'm not saying you should show this to elementary schoolers, for instance. But when they're old enough to grapple with serious issues, kids need to see Schindler's List. So you see, if you went with just what's in the movie, you would miss out on that. It's the worldview that matters the most. And let's be clear also, non-Christians are going to write from a non-Christian worldview. And we need to accept that. And to some extent, Christians who are mature need to be interacting with the material and showing what is problematic with it. There are some exceptions. Christians don't need to sit down and watch films that are made personally to be pornographic. We should understand right from the start what the obvious problem with that is. On the other hand, I'm also not going to say we should avoid anything that has sex in it whatsoever. Oh, hold on, I just got told the game isn't showing. Psh. Okay, hold on, I'm going to close this out here and... Okay, folks, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button there, so we had some technical difficulties with it. You're gonna have to trust that I've been going through this game, honestly, and sorry for mistake on my part. Really embarrassing for me. I'll see what I can do with this. This is the danger of live streaming, though. I accept it. But we're going to go through the rest of this here. And again, I want you to know I accept full responsibility for everything. The mistake was mine entirely, so please forgive me for the error. So, anyway, I'm not even saying we should avoid anything that has any sex in it. That might seem like a strange thing to say, but I'll give you an example. 1984. Okay, thoughts on here. We're going to take a little excursion here because I just had someone ask me in the chat. Thoughts on AI. Whew. AI is coming. It is inevitable. I don't think we can let the genie put the genie back in the bottle again. Having said that, I do have my concerns with it. Because one of my big concerns is I think for a lot of people, the internet killed their ability to think. And I think what could easily happen with AI is going to be that it could kill our ability to create. Yeah, it frightens me big time because I want to see people make stories and tell stories and not just depend on machines to do that. But I think that could easily happen with AI. So yeah, that worries me about the whole thing. That we could easily produce media just for ourselves and become further isolated as a result from one another. I hope that doesn't happen, but I can easily see it happening. Now, it is very problematic in this game how little space you have in your inventory. I wish there was so much more. A self-fix. We're going to equip that to our robot because what self-fix does is it allows him to rejuvenate hit points at the end of each turn. So that's my thoughts on AI. I think we're all going to have to learn how to use it eventually, but I want us all to be very careful of it as well and not be dependent on it. I want us to be able to create our own stories still. Stories are the big thing for me. So, the comment saying is preacher uses it for sermons. Yeah, your preacher needs to be creating his own sermons, I think. That's a concern of mine. So, going back, consider the book 1984. What's about? That book does have sex in it. In some ways, pretty explicit. Does that mean Christians shouldn't read it? No, Christians need to know about 1984. Now, of course, if you do struggle with something like pornography, that is something you should take into account. But I consider 1984 a highly important book. Okay? And I unfortunately get concerned that we are heading towards 1984 if we're not already there even. So again, this isn't a hard and fast rule. And when Christians have done things that they've treated as hard and fast rules, ultimately, a lot of the time, it leads to situations that we get contradictory. And the world notices that. whenever we do it. So consider when the Harry Potter series came out, and a lot of Christians were immediately saying, "Oh, magic! We can't have that." Well, a lot of other Christians in turn and said, "Well, what about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien? Their stories have magic in them." Yes, but they're Christians. So, magic is okay if a Christian does it, but it's not okay if a non-Christian does it, right? And yes, a lot of people saw the contradiction immediately, and as a result, it was harder for them to take Christian claims seriously. So would I say avoid Harry Potter because it has magic in it? Absolutely not, because by that standard you'd have to avoid the Chronicles of Narnia and the Lord of the Rings. What I want you to do in these cases is look and say, what is really being taught in the media under question? What is the danger your children can be in? Because the best tip you can honestly give your kids is to learn how to discern and learn how to analyze media. See, if I was told at one time that if you take a course in philosophy and study it seriously, you will never see a movie the same way again. And it's true. Because whenever you go see a movie, you will be looking and asking, what is the worldview being taught in this movie? Because every movie is trying to tell a story in some way. What story, every movie, every book, every video game is trying that. What story are they trying to tell? Right now, if you've seen, no, you haven't seen it yet because I haven't finished up on it yet. But one of the other games I'm going through at the time is one I enjoy from the past of Final Fantasy X. That game is about the battle to defeat sin. So I stop and ask, okay, what is being taught in this game? Now, do I think they have the right approach to dealing with sin? No. But at the same time, I think I have something that I can go to and talk about with even non-Christians and say, hey, you know this game that you can really enjoy? Yeah, let's talk about the worldview presented in there. Let's talk about the problem of sin and why it's such a big deal. Yeah, I think I'm going to see if I can equip the Paris suit here. Let's try this, see if I get rid of this. And if I do this, and then if I do this, can I then equip the Paris? Yeah. Okay. That clears up some extra space for me, at least temporarily. That's another great reason for going into this dungeon. Now, granted, there have been mistakes in this episode so far. And I want you all to understand one reason for that is, again, this whole thing is a one-man show. At least right now. And I would really appreciate your help in order to help make this an even better program. Please do consider supporting me on Patreon. I have a link in the description for you, and the minimum I request, but honestly, if you can do more, please do so, is to just give $5 a month. Okay, if you give that much, that's the price of, say, a cup of coffee, maybe two. And for that sacrifice, you'll be helping me out tremendously. More than you know. All this goes to just help me make it through seminary, help me get that PhD that I'm trying to get, help increase my outreach, help me rest a little bit easier at night, knowing that finances are not the major issue anymore. I also do have a Substack. I do hope eventually to be writing a lot more for it. I just barely have time to write for my own blog a lot of times. Whew. Super stressful. Want to make sure I don't get caught with anything there. I'm trying to use some items just because I'm running out of inventory, so I might as well use them. Just got curious how much money I've got in the game. And I also do have set up a Discord. You can go there and chat about video games, apologetics. I have a section to talk about autism there. And I have a section to talk about men going through divorce, a subject that I'm very passionate about as one who's gone through that, and I would still say it's accurate to say I'm going through that. It's something very painful, and men need a place where they can have safe discussions about divorce. So please do really consider taking part in what I'm doing here. So now, let's get back to what we're talking about here. Oh, another movie I would use as an example is The Matrix. Particularly the first one. I think the second one has better action, and the third one, no. Fourth one was, it was alright to me. I was kind of hoping for a bit more, but we'll see what the series does from here on. But the thing with the first Matrix movie is that it gives you an excellent chance to discuss worldview issues. And the thing is, you don't have to agree with the worldview of a Matrix. You just use it as a talking point to get the conversation started. Because a lot of people will say, oh yeah, the Matrix, I saw that. And they'll understand what you're talking about at that point. And again, the Matrix has profanity. It has violence. But it is an excellent starting point to talk about major issues. And if your audience is familiar with it, great. When that movie came out, it was super popular. If you weren't alive there and you didn't see it, you have no idea how popular it was. Again, what I'm saying with this is the simple solution of just avoid X does not work. Your children need to know how to handle X when it happens. So if you watch a movie with your kids and it does contain sex in it, for instance, you can talk about your children afterwards about it. Even if you fast forward through that part, you can still talk about it. You can just say, okay, we need to talk about what was there. Do you understand why we fast forwarded past that part? And have an informed discussion with your children on the matter. Because, parents, I hate to tell you guys this, but someday your children are going to leave home. And they need to know how to make decisions on their own. They need to be able to analyze media on their own. Be able to understand why some things are acceptable and some aren't. And if you haven't equipped them well in that area, they're going to be sitting duck spin entirely. They don't need to be dependent on you to tell them everything. Okay. What are your thoughts on Catholics' view of sex only being for procreation and not pleasure? Where, first off, I know some Catholics, and I don't think that's the Catholic view. I think it might be the view of some Catholics, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the Catholics I know who are past childbearing years are still all for having sex. And I don't think that's a problem. I do think that we who are Protestants, we need to have serious discussions more often about birth control. I'm not one who's going to say it's always wrong, but I'm also not going to be one who says it's always right. I think there are circumstances that we need to discuss with that. Like, for instance, I know someone who is a professor, and his wife has a condition, a bone condition. And if she got pregnant with this condition, she could very easily die. So they might be past childbearing years now, I'm not sure. But assuming they're not, I fully understand in that circumstance why they would be using birth control. But at the same time, I think if we're just saying, treating it as if kids are a problem that we should avoid, that says something about our view of children. And that's a problematic view we shouldn't hold to. Children are a gift, and we need to realize that. And we need to be raising up strong families, because but In our culture today, we live in a world where the birth rate is dwindling. We are not keeping up. And I don't have a doubt that one of the reasons for that is abortion. That we made abortion something allowable, and we took advantage of it, and we had too many children die as a result that should have come into the world. I do plan sometime in the future on doing a show on abortion. What I would like to do for that, though, is to get someone in the here sitting down with me who knows the topic very well and who can speak from a much more informed stance on the issues. So I'm still looking for such a person, so please keep that in mind. But also, having said that, I think if anyone is out there teaching the joys of sexuality, it should be Christians. Because our God is the one who made the whole system. And he made sex to be enjoyable. But it's meant to be enjoyed in the right context. The context of marriage. So, that's my stance on it. Oh yeah, I'll also say something better. We have this idea also of telling people where you shouldn't marry for sex. Paul didn't think that. Paul said, if you're someone who's going to burn, you should get married. One of the reasons people do get married is because they have a strong desire to have sex. And that's not wrong. Now, if that was your only reason, that's all you cared about, and you didn't care about the person, and you didn't care about building up the next generation, okay, we can talk about that. But if you just really want to experience the gift of intimacy with someone, that's not a problem. I mean, I want, as a divorced man, I want to have someone to share my life with. I want to have someone who I can wake up to next to every day. Sure. But if I told you sex had nothing whatsoever to do with that desire, I'd be lying through my teeth. Of course I miss that. Who wouldn't? So again, I'm not going to give that hard and fast rule, but yeah, I know it's kind of a bit off topic from what we've been discussing here, but yeah, Christians need to be upholding the good of sex. And when it comes to sex in movies, we should say, part of the problem is that it's too unrealistic. Everything happens perfectly every time, and you miss out on the joy of growing with someone and learning how to love them better, how to better understand them and celebrate them. So, anyway, parents, your kids, they're going to leave home someday. Okay? It's going to happen. You need them to be prepared when they do, so that when they encounter media, they'll know what to do with it. They'll know how to analyze it. They'll know how to understand it. And they won't just be saying, oh, it has profanity, so I can't have that with me. I'd be saying, okay, this has profanity, but what else is in this media? Is there something really good that I can get out of this? In other words, you need to teach them how to think Christian. They need to learn what their worldview is, why they hold it, and then they interpret everything from that position. They look at what they see out there and say, okay, if this is the worldview I'm coming from, what does Jesus say about the message of the story? Because there are some stories out there that could be very much G-rated, and seeing as I'm not one who really watches Christian film or children's films a lot, I can't speak on specific examples. They won't have profanity. They won't have sex in them. But they could be horrible films for your children to watch based on worldview. You need to be aware of that fact. You don't just look at the movie rating. That is something to consider. But you look and you say, what is this media teaching my child? Now, overall, I think Brand New Day does have a pretty good message to it. It could be taken in a very wrong way, definitely. But taken in a right way, I think it is a good one. And I've spoken on this issue before of love and understanding and acceptance, because the whole idea is just everyone should just be accepted for who they are. Well, no, that's not really a good message, because some people are sinners and some choices are sinful, and we need to point that out. But if the idea is you can be loved regardless of who you are, that's a great message. And we should share that. And that is also a Christian message. Jesus can and does love you just as you are. But as I've said earlier, that doesn't mean he loves everything about you just as you are. Love does not mean approval. Love often requires that a person change what they are doing. You could even say if you say you love someone except for Jesus, and you don't want anything about them to change, I'd contend you've actually made that person an idol instead. Okay, comments say unrelated but thoughts on influx of Orthodox and Catholic conversions from Protestantism. And my thoughts are, I understand why a lot of people move to Catholicism and Orthodoxy. There are things in those traditions that I definitely commend, I think are very interesting and worthwhile, but I still disagree with. I think if we're Protestants, and when I say that, this is nothing against viewers and friends of mine who are watching, who could be Catholic and Orthodox, but there's no doubt that I think a large majority, at least here in America, of Christians are Protestant. We need to have in Protestantism a deep understanding of what we believe and why. Why are we Protestant? And at the same time, I think it behooves us to look at traditions outside of ours and see why they are appealing to people. My ex-wife was considering Orthodoxy for a while, which got me studying it some, and there's a lot I appreciate in the Orthodox tradition. There's a lot I disagree with, but there's a lot I appreciate. I like the emphasis that I see often on holiness, and I like the message of beauty. I mean, you walk into an Orthodox church service, and it is like walking into a different world. And I think we need to understand that better from my perspective. I understand that sometimes there have to be exceptions that you worship where you can, but we can often have churches that don't look like churches. You don't go in there and get a sense of holiness necessarily from being in the place. And that's something we can miss. I think Catholics have a lot of excellent work on moral theology and ethics, particularly in the area of abortion. I think that can be very beneficial to us. But if there's an area that I think Protestants tend to excel in more than the others, and again, I'm not saying this is something across the board, this is just my general thoughts on the matter, and this is something that I even heard from some Orthodox people that my wife and I were meeting one time, and the guy said, well, I'll give the Protestants this. They sure know their Bibles. And that's something we should take seriously and celebrate, and something we should really study. We should know our Bibles, and we should know them very well. But ultimately, it's also an area I try to not really get involved with. Because like I've said, I have friends who are Catholics. I have friends who are Orthodox. I have a lot of respect for the communities. And generally when I talk to them, I like to talk about the things we agree on, not the things we disagree on. I meet with some Catholics almost every Thursday night because we get together and we study Thomas Aquinas, and I am a strong Thomist, and I'm very much respected. Very. If even sometimes it seems like I'm one of the authorities on Thomism in the group. And I'm fond of that. And sometimes they will come to me and say, okay, now as a Protestant, how do you see this? And I'm happy to answer from my perspective. And along these lines also, if I see someone giving what I consider a bad argument against Catholicism, or a bad argument against Orthodoxy, I'll answer that bad argument. Heck, if I saw someone giving a bad argument against Mormonism or Islam or even atheism, yeah, I'd answer that argument too. Because as Christians, we need to use good arguments in every area. And if someone who is an atheist sees me pointing out that an argument against atheism is flawed, I think they're more likely to treat me with respect and realize how serious I am in the matter. And if an argument for Christianity is a bad argument, I'll seek to undermine it. That way, if you tell this fairy that it wasn't bad, she'll send you right back into it again. So now that we've raided that area, actually I didn't mean to do that. We're gonna go to the town again and rest. So, parents, what we want to tell you is, yes, protect your kids. Before they go see a movie, go check in references like Plugged In and other things. See what's in the movie. Try to find out what the worldview is. Talk with your children about things in a movie that seem problematic to you. But even if it was a good movie and there wasn't anything problematic, talk about it afterwards. Talk about what you can learn from it. Talk about things you can see from a worldview perspective that your children might miss. Don't helicopter your children because you cannot protect them forever. That way. And it's interesting, this thing is called Magus. I think it was called Mason originally. You're not going to protect your kids forever. They're going to get out there in the real world. They're going to face challenges. They're going to face behaviors they disagree with and opinions they disagree with. And they need to be taught how to deal with that. The best gift you can give them is not protection. It's preparation. Train them to be ready for what is coming. Well, that's about all I can say. And people, I seriously apologize for the mishap I had earlier. It's embarrassing, but meh, I'll move on from it. Gotta do it. We all make mistakes. And my boss is being very super sensitive about a mistake. I go tell her about this tomorrow and say, see, I made a big mistake. It happens. You move past it. Please do become a supporter of Gaming Theologian, but you can always become one of Deeper Waters. That's my blog as well. But please support me here. What I do for you all, so you all can be equipped. And thanks for coming by. It means so much. Thanks for your comments. I do try and read and interact. And well, we're going to wait till we get to the end of this conveyor here before I stop for the day. Ooh, that was painful. Remember, people, I do it from a virgin birth, and whatever you do it for the glory of God, even your gaming. Bye for now.